During the 1950s and 1970s, America entered the golden age of long-haul trucking. In the lonely world of cross-country journeys stretching over weeks at a time, independent truck stops were far more than just places to refuel. They were fortresses of survival and sanctuaries where drivers could rediscover the warmth of a family home. The truck stops of that era operated on real kitchens, where artisan cooks crafted every single dish from scratch as the stove fired up at dawn. A bitter contrast to today's corporate, sterile travel plazas where microwaves and frozen convenience foods have completely silenced the sizzle of the cast-iron skillet, reducing a working-class dinner to flat, industrial plastic boxes. Today, Nostalgia Cookery will flip open the logbook with you to unearth 20 legendary dishes that once fueled generations of American truckers. This is no mere outdated menu. It is a living history reflecting the full heritage, culture, and dignity of the long-haul working class. Hit that subscribe button, and let's hit the road. 1. Open-faced hot beef sandwich. Opening the survival route is the open-faced hot beef sandwich, the ultimate iconic open-faced sandwich of every family-owned Midwestern truck stop throughout the 1950s and 1960s. This was a recipe engineered to deliver maximum raw caloric density, packing starches and protein for a dirt-cheap price of under $1. The dish absolutely refused to be eaten with one's hands. Truckers were forced to use a metal fork because the sauce was so overwhelmingly drenched and sticky. They salvaged leftover roast beef from the previous day's pot roast, slicing it thin to stretch the protein across the bread. The scorching heat of the dense brown gravy crafted from the savory fond crystals scraped off the bottom of a cast-iron skillet infiltrated and broke down the structure of the stale white sandwich bread, transforming the starch into a soft, melt-in-your-mouth texture, just like a savory, rich pudding. Served alongside a mountain of gravy-smothered mashed potatoes, this 95-cent platter, which included a cup of black coffee, functioned as a biofuel that would truly stick to your ribs. Through 6 grueling hours of gripping the steering wheel across the dust storms of Iowa or Nebraska, that beef fat-soaked starch kept the trucker's muscles from giving out. 2. Hot turkey plate. The hot turkey plate operated on the exact same mechanical structure as the hot beef sandwich, but its emotional weight carried the gravity of a massive nostalgic anchor. It took the form of a complete Thanksgiving feast crafted specifically for lonely men stranded in the middle of a long-haul route. The turkeys were roasted whole on Sundays, then carved and kept in steam tables throughout the week, meaning that by Thursday, the meat had turned as bone-dry as rotting timber. Yet, the scorching dark brown gravy flooded over the top of the platter, corrected every structural error. It rehydrated the stale protein fibers, binding seamlessly with the mountain of buttery mashed potatoes and the rustic herb-infused stuffing. Refusing the fancy embellishments of cranberry sauce or candied yams, this 8 5-cent platter delivers absolute satisfaction in exactly 8 minutes flat from the kitchen line. It made the trucker feel like a human being who was still cared for, packing enough calories to plow through another 300 miles of wild highway before the darkness completely locked down the road. 3. Hot pork plate. Born from the thrifty wisdom of agrarian Indiana, the hot pork plate was the country cook's answer to transforming slow-roasted pork into a masterpiece of structural contrast, all thanks to the arrival of a secret solvent, chilled applesauce. They thickly sliced the slow-roasted pork loin, flooding it with a savory pork fat gravy over a bed of white sandwich bread, then placed a scoop of chilled applesauce right alongside. The culinary code lay in the immediate collision. The clean sweetness, sharp acidity, and ice-cold temperature of the applesauce completely broke down the suffocating saturated fats of the pork and the mashed potato starch, lubricating the guest's palate. Priced at just 95 cents in 1960, this platter was the ultimate nutritional anchor for truckers hauling corn to East Coast livestock feed mills. It evaporated from the highway routes when pork was stripped of its identity, transformed into the sterile, prepackaged deli meat strips found in supermarket plastic boxes today. 4. Patty melt on rye. The patty melt on rye was the truck stop's resounding answer to transforming a regular hamburger into a grilled masterpiece of structural engineering, demanding true mastery of heat and timing from the short-order cooks. They pressed the sandwich firmly onto the flat top using a heavy cast-iron bacon press, forcing all the savory juices of the ground beef patty to infiltrate the sticky, caramelized onions. A blanket of melted Swiss cheese acted as a gooey adhesive, binding with the golden toasted rye bread. The subtle bitterness and sharp, pungent kick of caraway seeds embedded in the rye completely broke down the saturated richness of the dairy, forging a structure that was shatteringly crisp on the outside yet molten and liquid at the core. Priced at 75 cents in 1960, the dish delivers a level of sheer abundance that completely puts mass-produced, flat fast food burgers to shame. It was wiped out from modern drive-thrus because corporate efficiency timers absolutely refused to spare 5 minutes for manual iron pressing on a scorching flat top. 5. Pot roast plate. Sitting at number 5 is the pot roast plate, the most deeply cherished comfort food on the route. A maternal anchor connecting the muscles of the weary traveler back to his mother's kitchen on freezing winter afternoons when snow locked down the city. They slow-simmered a tough, mature beef chuck roast continuously for 4 hours alongside chunk-cut potatoes and carrots. The sealed braising process completely shattered the mechanical connective tissue, melting collagen into natural gelatin that automatically emulsified the broth into a glossy, rich thickness that clung tightly to the fork-tender meat, resolutely refusing the intervention of flour. The dish radiated a savory, deeply sweet steam derived from the root vegetables of the deep earth. Priced at $1 in 1961, this plate of tender pot roast served alongside crusty bread rescued the souls of truckers who had been away from home for 3 grueling weeks. When truck stops transformed into commercial gas stations, this muscle-melting beef stew vanished forever because modern kitchens absolutely refuse the art of waiting. 6. Beef tips and egg noodles. Beef tips and egg noodles was a truck stop dish bearing the flavor of true, painstaking labor, because the rich, velvety structure of its meat sauce absolutely refused any shortcuts or camouflage by industrial thickeners. The scrap beef tips were slow-simmered for 3 continuous hours alongside fresh mushrooms and onions. The long hours of stewing dismantled the animal protein fibers, releasing fats that bound with the natural juices to self-reduce into a smooth pan gravy that clung tightly to the wide, tender egg noodles. Each ribbon of noodle drank in the savory, rich sauce infused with a deep, oaky mineral depth. A magnificent feast-like platter priced at $1 in 1963, it reigned proudly at truck stop lunch counters on the outskirts of Topeka. The dish became completely extinct on interstate highways because modern fast food chains flatly refuse the art of patience, a luxury asset belonging strictly to the past. 7. Swiss steak. Refusing any geographical connection to Switzerland, the name Swiss steak originates from the ancient craft of swissing, a mechanical term for using a spiked iron mallet to continuously pummel and tame the toughest, most stubborn muscle fibers of a mature steer into a strip of tender silk. They pounded the meat, dredged it in flour to fry a crisp exterior, and then slow braised it for 2 continuous hours in an ocean of crushed tomatoes, celery, and green bell peppers. The aggressive acidity of the tomatoes combined with the beef fat completely shattered the stubborn protein chains, rendering the meat so fork-tender that it practically dismantled itself under the pressure of a fork, flooding a savory, tangy, and robust sauce over a bed of mashed potatoes. Priced at 95 cents in 1964, the dish was positioned as a luxury dinner that rescued the physical bodies of truckers who had been grinding at the steering wheel for a solid week along the route. It has stepped back into the annals of church cookbooks since flat corporate kitchens flatly refused the time required for sealed oven braising. 8. Salisbury steak with mushroom gravy. Invented in 1880 by Dr. James Salisbury as a medicinal functional food to combat fatigue, the Salisbury steak with robust mushroom gravy was the mechanical benchmark that dominated every truck stop dinner table throughout the 1950s for a mere 80 cents. They shaped ground beef into an oval patty to mimic the structural form of a luxury steak, searing the exterior to lock in the savory juices, then flooded it with an ocean of wild mushroom gravy crafted from a rich, buttery roux. Truckers memorized exactly which stop employed a cook who knew how to control the broiler's heat to ensure the roux achieved an ideally smooth, velvety density while resolutely refusing any clumping. The culinary code regarding truck stops serving an exceptional Salisbury steak was constantly broadcasted through the CB radio airwaves along the route. Pull into the 76 inches Effingham. That network of oral wisdom died instantly when supermarket corporations simultaneously replaced it with flat, industrial frozen Salisbury steak TV dinners. 9. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Sitting at number 9 is meatloaf and mashed potatoes, the immortal titan that fully defined American truck stop culinary culture for half a century. A sincere, rustic recipe that absolutely refused fancy embellishments, yet packed a complete punch of raw survival calories. They kneaded the two types of ground protein with their bare hands, baking it for an hour until the ketchup topping crystallized into a sweet, crusty glaze, sheltering a core that remained intensely juicy with saturated fats. Two thickly sliced slabs of meatloaf, smothered in an ocean of glossy brown gravy, stood barricaded against a mountain of velvety mashed potatoes, delivering a savory, robust texture infused with deep animal mineral notes. Priced at 90 cents in 1960, the meatloaf platter was the ultimate symbol of sheer belly-filling satisfaction, a physical saving grace for any trucker exhausted after a brutal day at the steering wheel. Today, it has been pushed into the shadows of nostalgia, surviving only as a rare keepsake item at outdated Cracker Barrel locations. 10. Hamburger steak with grilled onions. The hamburger steak with grilled onions was a resounding declaration from truckers who demanded a dinner drenched in fresh animal protein while staying within a tightly buckled budget. It was a proud steak that absolutely refused the commercial hamburger bun. They shaped a half-pound meat patty, seasoned it heavily with coarse salt, and smashed it flat onto a high-heat griddle to sear the exterior into a crisp mechanical shield, locking in a core that remained intensely juicy with saturated fats. The crown was buried under a mountain of onions caramelized into sweet, velvety ribbons, perfectly balancing the brutal, savory mineral kick of the animal protein. Priced at a mere 70 cents in 1959, and served alongside a salad drenched in vibrant, reddish-orange French dressing, the dish was executed in exactly 5 minutes flat from the cook's station. Today's corporate travel plazas have banished it from the counter, replacing it with sterile, pre-frozen quarter-pound burger patties trucked in from centralized distribution warehouses. 11. Cube steak with brown gravy. The cube steak with brown gravy was a masterclass in economic engineering, solving the luxury steak equation for America's long-haul muscle workforce, built entirely from the toughest, cheapest beef round cuts at the butcher's counter. The secret lay in the mechanical cross-hatched grid patterns that shattered the stubborn muscle fibers, allowing the meat to conduct heat rapidly while drawing salt and pepper crystals deep into its core. They dredged it in flour and pan-seared it at lightning speed for exactly 4 minutes per side, absolutely refusing any overcooking that would turn the protein into shoe leather before deglazing the pan's savory crust. To self-emulsify into a rich pan gravy poured over mashed potatoes. Priced at just 85 cents in 1961, the dish provided a magnificent illusion of a high-society steak dinner for the working poor. It was permanently erased in the 1990s when low-cost family restaurant chains simultaneously slashed the prices of commercial, mass-produced animal protein. 12. Chicken fried steak. Standing at number 12 is the chicken fried steak, the uncrowned king, the most splendid crown ruling over the culinary map of the American South. This was a dish possessing an extreme gravitational pull, causing truckers to willingly crank their steering wheels and detour hundreds of miles off their route. They armored the protein cut using a double dredging process through buttermilk before deep frying it in pork lard to a crisp golden edge. The ultimate structural code lay in this. The pastry-like flour jacket was strictly required to maintain its shatteringly crispy crust, even when flooded under a scorching wave of white, buttery cream gravy packed with cracked black pepper. Cooks achieved this through a strict mechanical rule. Only flood the gravy at the very last second before sliding the platter onto the pass. The identities of the female cooks who mastered the code of this crispy armor were passed among truckers over CB radio, echoing across 3 states of the Southern Plains. Modern corporate chains have completely failed to duplicate that proud, shatteringly crisp structural armor. 13. Smothered pork chops. The smothered pork chops was a magnificent showcase of the art of smothering, a direct West African culinary technique that survived the era of slavery, possessing the sheer power to transform bone-dry Wisconsin pork chops into strips of tender silk. They seared bone-in pork chops to allow the bone to conduct heat from the inside out, flooded them with a velvety milk gravy packed with caramelized onion drippings, and oven braised them for 90 continuous minutes at 325 degrees Fahrenheit. The sealed braising process completely unraveled the mechanical muscle fibers, rendering the pork so fork tender that the bone automatically slid away from the meat, while the sweet onion gravy completely saturated the buttery mashed potatoes. Priced at 95 cents in 1962 at Southern truck stops, this dish converted even the proudest Northern truckers into lifelong disciples of the Southern cast iron skillet. Today, this authentic craft of smothering has completely evaporated from highway menu boards. 14. Knockwurst and sauerkraut. Stepping into the realm of immigrant heritage, knockwurst and sauerkraut stood as a monument of raw, mechanical energy, reigning proudly over truck stops throughout the heavy industrial Rust Belt, from Pennsylvania and Ohio to Wisconsin. The German immigrant community gifted the highway a thick, garlic-heavy 6-inch beef and pork sausage, slow-simmered all day long alongside tangy sauerkraut and a splash of pale lager. The oven's intense heat forced the cabbage shreds to drink in the saturated fats rendered from the sausage, softening its own structure while releasing the pungent essential oils of caraway seeds. The sausage casing split open under the knife with a distinct, snap-crisp crack. Priced at $1 in 1962 and served with a slice of dark rye bread, this dish delivered a massive payload of raw sodium that soothed the muscles of steelworkers and long-haul truckers alike. The natural fermentation of the sauerkraut functioned as a protective shield, settling the trucker's stomach through 6 grueling hours behind the wheel. 15. American goulash. Refusing the subtle complexities of the original Hungarian school, American goulash was a mechanical invention of the Midwestern kitchen, transforming a single stew into a high-efficiency machine that delivered clean calories and protein to crowds at a bare minimum cost. They simmered ground beef, bell peppers, and macaroni noodles directly within an ocean of tomato sauce heavily infused with paprika. Through long hours of slow stewing all day long, the macaroni released its own starches, self-emulsifying the tomato broth into a vibrant, reddish-orange solution packed with deep mineral notes. Every passing hour of simmering allowed the savory and sweet flavor profiles to fuse and meld into a seamlessly smooth, concentrated density. A single massive pot, priced at 65 cents a bowl in 1960, sustained 80 truckers a day each week, served alongside garlic bread and a glass of rich, tangy buttermilk. Today, this great survival dish has completely retreated from interstate highway corridors, surviving only at old-fashioned church potlucks in Ohio. 16. Stuffed green peppers. Stuffed green peppers stood as the ultimate triumph of kitchen resourcefulness, transforming a humble green bell pepper into a self-contained vault of pure energy, a single dish, delivering a complete payload of fiber and fresh animal protein. They stuffed ground beef, white rice, and Parmesan cheese deep into the cavity of the green pepper, flooded it with tomato sauce, and baked it for an hour at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. The intense oven heat forced the pepper to collapse and wilt, releasing sweet and savory herbal essential oils that self-braised the starch filling within. This mechanical seal locked the mouth of the protein pouch, resolutely refusing any evaporation of savory juices, delivering a structure that was honey-succulent on the outside yet rich and velvety at the core. Priced at 80 cents in 1961 and served alongside charred garlic toast, the dish carried the distinct soul of an old-world European kitchen, sending Polish-American truckers from Detroit straight to culinary heaven. The dish vanished forever when modern travel plazas completely eradicated open-air baking ovens from their floor plans. 17. Liver and onions. Liver and onions once reigned as an absolute Tuesday ritual at every single truck stop throughout the 1960s for a mere 79 cents. This dish was a raw biological weapon that shattered the physical exhaustion of the long-haul trucker. They dredged beef liver in flour and pan-seared it at lightning speed in high-heat bacon grease, resolutely refusing any overcooking that would transform the liver into a bone-dry stick of chalk before burying it under a mountain of sweet, caramelized onion ribbons. In those days, the massive payload of iron and micronutrients packed within beef liver was regarded as the ultimate antidote to combat fatigue, keeping the driver razor-sharp and alert through 400 miles of wild night highways. It was a recipe that delivered fierce customer loyalty to any diner employing a cook who knew how to keep the liver velvety and succulent. By the 1990s, the dish completely evaporated from the national menu as Americans turned their backs on offal, executing a sanctuary of working-class nutrition. 18. Beef tongue sandwich. Sitting at number 18 is the beef tongue sandwich, a sandwich employing an ingredient that has completely evaporated from the modern pantry: whole beef tongue. This was a grand epic of dense, supple muscle structure. They slow-simmered the beef tongue for 4 continuous hours to force the resilient muscle fibers to surrender their entire reservoir of savory juices, slicing it thin to layer against the grain over caraway-studded rye bread. Because the tongue is a muscle in constant motion, it packs an intensely concentrated, deep beef flavor that completely outclasses expensive chuck or round steaks, colliding perfectly with the sharp, pungent kick of raw red onions. Priced at a mere 60 cents in 1958, the beef tongue sandwich was a living legacy of Jewish immigrant culinary heritage flooding into the highway system. Today, beef tongue has become more expensive than a ribeye steak, and this dish has vanished forever, reduced to a distant museum artifact. 19. Biscuits and sausage gravy. Opening the final chapter is biscuits and sausage gravy, a tidal wave of buttery dairy, the quintessential breakfast mandatory for jump-starting the physical bodies of Southern truckers before entering a brutal, day-long shift of grinding at the steering wheel. They salvaged the saturated fats rendered from frying spicy breakfast sausage to toast flour, flooding it with whole milk while whisking aggressively into a thick, velvety cream sauce heavily packed with cracked black pepper crystals. The biscuits were strictly required to be baked fresh every single dawn at the truck stop, ensuring the open, flaky structure of the starch could completely drink in the rich gravy, resolutely refusing factory frozen dough. Priced at a mere 45 cents in 1958, this smoky, savory payload of fat and calories sheltered the trucker's muscles, keeping his belly full for 5 continuous hours. It was completely executed when corporate chains replaced it with factory-frozen biscuit rounds as rock-hard as hockey pucks and dehydrated gravy powder packed in plastic bags. 20. Coffee and pie. And sitting at number 1, the greatest throne ruling over the entire culture and soul of American truck stops is the ultimate combo: coffee, and pie. This absolutely refused to be categorized as a regular lunch or breakfast. It was a 3 a.m. survival covenant forged in the middle of a highway freezing blizzard. The pie lady stepped into the truck stop at 4 a.m., combining pork lard and fresh butter to knead a pastry crust baked fresh daily with seasonal fruits. Long-haul night shift truckers docked at the stop at 3 a.m., welcomed by a scorching cup of black coffee that was automatically refilled for free, alongside a slice of warm, freshly baked pie. The caffeine detonated the nervous system back to alertness, the fruit sugars replenished caloric fuel, and that bite of a shatteringly crisp exterior and sweet, molten core shared alongside two strangers generated a warmth equivalent to the maternal embrace needed for a lonely, muscle-weary worker. A mythical experience along Route 66 that was completely wiped out when corporate travel plazas replaced the artisan bakery with industrial, pre-packaged pastries as dry as factory cardboard, stripping away the trucker's very last emotional anchor. These 20 forgotten roadside dishes were never luxurious works of fine art crafted to serve the high society elite. They are a living chronicle written in pure texture, a testament to a heroic golden era of American long-haul trucking, acting as a life-saving anchor and physical sanctuary that protected millions of drivers as they conquered thousands of miles across wild, untamed highway routes. They stand as proof of a more human age, a time when a hot, hearty platter, a black coffee automatically refilled to the brim, and a slice of warm pie baked fresh at dawn could make the most grueling, solitary journeys feel safe and warm inside the chest. When those oval ceramic plates drenched in heavy gravy vanished forever from the interstate highway system, America did not merely erase a humble working-class menu. America officially executed a sacred sanctuary of highway culture, a spatial haven that tightly bound the cords of human connection for an entire generation of resilient drivers who weathered the storms of their time. That legacy lives proudly on, enduring defiantly within the nostalgic memories of deeply dignified, hard-working muscles. This week, try placing a cast-iron skillet on your stove, slow simmering a pot of roast with rich gravy, slowing your pace down, and returning here to leave a comment, letting Nostalgia Cookery know the highway stories of your own family lineage. Hit that subscribe button to always ride alongside nostalgia. Wish you a peaceful dinner, and may you find safe passage across a 10,000-mile journey.